And welcome back to, I guess, season 2, but episode number 43 of Raise the Banner podcast. I got two people I've never podcast with before here. Zach's joined the Raise the Banner team. Zach, welcome.
Thank you.
And we got Sammy here from Play Tessie and does some WEI work. Boys, how you doing?
Good, man.
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Ready to have some fun? All right. Let's just jump right into it. Obviously, the Sox came back from the All-Star break, and, well, things haven't been great, to say the least. Some tough games, hard-fought games they probably should have won. How are we feeling? You know, I think most people were in the bye category about a week ago. How are you feeling over the last week, and has it changed kind of any bit of your mindset? I'll start with you, Sammy.
Yeah, I haven't changed much. I mean, big picture, 162 game season, a little rut, I don't think should change the big picture of how this team operates. I do feel a little more concerned about the bullpen than I did a few weeks ago. And I think that the deficiencies of this roster were kind of exposed a bit, which, you know, obviously that's not good, but when you want your team to buy, it's kind of like, well, there you go. You need a right-handed bat, you need a starting pitcher, and you might even need a reliever. Three things that I think hurt them in the Dodgers series and the Rockies series. So obviously not ideal, but big picture, my feelings on this team really hasn't changed.
All right, how about you, Zach?
I agree. I think I'm personally someone who always is in the buy category. That didn't change since the All-Star break. I was very happy prior to the All-Star break when they were playing very well. I think they had the best record in baseball from like mid-June on, maybe even end of May on. So I'm still in the buy category. Was more concerned with the Rockies series than I was with Dodgers. Obviously, Dodgers are a great team. Rockies are having a tough season. So
you could just say they're bad.
They're bad. Yeah, they're bad.
That's the best way to put it.
Do the PC thing. So no, I think they're having a bad season. They're not a good team, right? But to Sammy's point, all of the things that we've all been talking about, right-handed bat, starting pitching, and relievers, were just accentuated, and the defense is, in the 20-7 game was really accentuated, and it's kind of another example of just needing people to help this team come along.
Yeah, I mean, that's nothing really has changed for me. Obviously, you drop a game or two in the standings, and they're not like, I think before the All-Star break were they in the last wild card spot at the All-Star break, I believe. Now they're 2 games back at 2.5. Nothing's really changed, especially kind of with the New York series coming up. They could gain some ground directly on them, which would obviously certainly help if they come away with a sweep against the Yankees. Then
if you sweep the Yankees, I think if you win 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, nobody's even going to talk about the Rockies series or the Dodgers series. Like it's so funny how things change so quickly in baseball. Like going into the break, felt like the consensus about the Red Sox was this team is great. You got to buy, and not just buy. I'm talking big moves. And then they lose a few games, and now it's like, man, they might be sellers. I don't know. It's like, relax. We like I said earlier, like we lose sight of how long this season is. There's still 50-something games left. They could lose 35 of them. They could win 35 of them. We got no idea. I think the smart thing to do, in my opinion, would be to buy modestly. I don't think it's smart to go out and get like Luis Robert. That's not for this season. It's not an all-in season. I think maybe in the offseason you do something like that. But right now, all you got to do is patch some deficiencies. And I think, like, of course, there's multiple, like I just said, but they're not impossible to patch. Like a right-handed bat, you can get Ibanez from the Tigers. He crushes lefties. He's 31 years old. He's going to cost you nothing. Like, great, cool, that's patched. Starting pitcher. There's multiple guys. I keep hearing there's not many guys on the market. I don't totally agree with that. If you look at the sellers, even the Rangers might be selling. Just think there's more options as long as the Red Sox are comfortable overpaying a bit. So we'll see. I don't think it's as complicated as a lot of people are making it out to be.
No, and the biggest thing for me is how I want them to approach this is if they're going to give up bigger names and, even beyond the top 3, if they're going to give up the Nick Yorks and, the Buises and the Cespedes, like those guys in those range, or even the Midroth range, it's got to be for a guy that has some control. I'm not really big on them buying rentals and giving up any type of notable prospect for rentals, because I think we're all kind of in the same boat where, we think this team has a shot, but we also know we're a little bit realistic of where this team is, altogether.
Right.
Yeah. So if they can get some cheap rentals, like you mentioned, Ibanez, if they need a reliever, I know like Drew Smiley from the Cubs could be dirt cheap, like pennies on the dollar. I can't imagine it'll cost shit.
Chafin has a club option for next year at like 6.5. So like if they want to pay that, they can. He's going to be nothing this year. I think he's making 4.2 million this year. So he'd cost nothing this year. They have the option to have him left here. He's a swing and miss lefty, which is the verbiage that the Red Sox use through the media. They want to swing and miss lefty. So like, and we could keep going. Nardi on the Marlins. Who else? There's just more and more.
I know you were vocal about him the other
dude. Yeah, I want the big, hairy Italian dude. Big guy.
A less popular opinion that I've kind of been following along. I know there was talks about DFA again, but James Paxton probably not the most like sexy move, right? He's already been here before. But for a right-handed dominant rotation, a guy like Paxton who's done it before, he's been in the rotation, he's been on the Red Sox and the staff and pitch in Fenway during what was kind of a bit of a run. Like someone like him, he's going to be dirt cheap. He's already being talked about being DFA'd as well, so it might not even cost you any prospects. He's another option too that I've kind of been tossing the idea around, and also don't mind. So just another like left-handed like pitching to kind of keep in mind as we have 5.
Yeah, I mean he could be a very cheap option, like you said, and they could bring him in, and it shouldn't stop them from adding another pitcher if they want.
Yeah, if you get Paxton, you can add an additional like depth starter. Like this guy just got signed, but I'm not talking about a fun, exciting guy, but like a Jordan Lyles type who just obviously the Dodgers just snagged him. But if you get Paxton, you could get someone else like that, like a safety net, a guy that you ideally don't want to see, but if something happens, he's there.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not against them going a little bit of big fish, hunting, big fish fishing. Because like they do have a plethora of talent in the minors. As we kind of all know, there's really no room for all these guys coming up and over the years. Now, some of them may flail out and, not make it, and that'll make the decision easier for you. But at the same time, if you're Craig Breslow, you got to look at, the middle infield positions and the outfield positions and say, who's our long-term guys? Who do we want here long-term? Duran seems to be that option. Obviously, at this point, it would be really difficult to move him with the way he's played. Rafael just signed the extension. Obviously, they got Abreu, and then they got Anthony. They got Campbell in the coming years. And the list can kind of keep going of options that they have. Breslow needs to decide which guys we're keeping. And when you make that decision, if they say, okay, Blease, doesn't really look like he has a long-term spot here, we could use him and maybe a Nick York, who again might not have a long-term spot here. You package those two guys together, you could probably get a pretty good baseball player and a guy with control. Yeah,
the thing with Miguel Bleis, if you trade him right now, I believe he's 19 or 20.
His value's a little lower than it should be.
He's in the low minors. Yeah, so it's that kind of, this is why being a GM is so hard. And not that I have any clue what goes into being a GM. This guy could completely fall off a cliff when he gets to AA, and then you got nothing. Or you could trade him, and
absolutely.
He can become Luis Robert 2, Julio Rodriguez 2. So, the low minors guys are a little scary to package in those big trades for both sides. But, if we're talking about what do we say? Big fish hunting, big fish fishing.
Yeah, big fish hunting, not
doing that.
Fishing.
I don't know if I would. It would be really, really hard for me to be convinced that trading anyone beyond like Christian Campbell. I feel like that might be the most valuable prospect I'd be comfortable parting with. Of course, that's not like if Tarek Skubal is available, something insane like that, some like 0.1% chance of happening.
It's a balance. It's a balance of, if a stud pitcher becomes available, obviously you talk even the big three guys, but
right, like shit happens, but generally this year, like you kind of alluded to it, Matt, like they're a fun team. They could make the playoffs, but we're not deluded. We don't think this is a team like these guys are World Series or bust. That's just not the case. Like, could they get there? Sure, it's baseball, but like, I just feel the way to go this deadline. And how many days away are we? Like a week away? 6 days?
Is it 31st?
I honestly don't remember if it's
31st or the 30th. Yeah, right around there. Whatever it is, it's a week away. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next week when we get to the deadline, I should probably know that. I'm talking about trades on like 3 different shows. You probably know the date of the deadline. But when we get there, I think that, like I said earlier in the show, modest additions is the way to go. And then next year, when you know what your roster is going to look like in 2025, that's when you go, fuck it. Let's make a big move. Let's make a splash. Let's get Lou Bob or friggin' whoever, some Mariners pitcher, even though they don't want to trade anybody. They don't even understand that offense exists. So we'll see, man. I just like this year, like let's be smart about it. Remember where we are, who we are, etc.
I mean, I have to believe. I agree. I think I have to believe that Breslow in front office has an idea of what they want. Right? They've talked enough about picking a lane, and they don't want to do what Heimblum was accused of for the past couple of years and staying in the middle. You're selling some pieces off. You're getting some big pieces too. Like you have to pick a lane. I have to believe that the front office and Craig Breslow have done that, right? Otherwise, I don't think that Cora would have signed that 3-year extension. I think that there was something that was said, some conversations were had where he liked what he heard. He liked the direction that at least they wanted to go. And he was like, screw it, I'm going to stick around for another couple of years. I believe in this team. I see the vision. So let's do it. Let's sign on for, I think what the second highest salary outside of Craig Counsell for managers, maybe the third. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's up there.
That's a good point. Good point, Zach.
Yeah.
I think that people often overthink things, kind of like X happens, which means that Y will happen. But in this case, I do agree with you. I think that based on how Cora operates and what he's said in the past, that you have to be encouraged that he just signed this extension mid-season, which he said he didn't want to do either. So
it came out of left field.
It really did.
It was, I'm not talking extension during the season, and then not even like, hey, they're talking, and then maybe a week later something gets done. It was
within like 30 minutes. I saw.
Yeah, it was they're talking, and then like an hour later, there's a deal.
Yeah. I mean, they had to have blown him away because I don't think Cora's a guy who's dishonest in the media. There's some guys you can tell kind of say what you want them to say or say what they think is the best thing to say. I think Cora really is genuinely an honest guy when he talks to the media, and that's kind of rare. So when he said no negotiating in the middle of the season, I believe him. Now, it probably happened, but he didn't think it was going to happen. So I have to think that he was shocked by this offer. I mean, I'm shocked. I did not think that the Red Sox would offer him, like, we can round it up $7.1 million a year. That, if you asked me if they'd offer him that, I would say, hell no. Have you seen how these guys operate? So to put a button on it, Zach, I agree with the point. It's a good sign. It seems like things are changing a bit.
I agree. And I think to that point, you've alluded to it before, but obviously we're not going to go, balls to the wall this year. But if we have the big three coming up at the end of this year, beginning of next year, maybe midway through, whatever, with Roman Anthony, with Marcelo Meyer and Kyle Teal, like if that's your big three, then, then you kind of go for it. Then you start talking about those big fish that you want to go get, whether it's a pitcher, whether it is you're starting to trade pieces like some of these left-handed bats that go kind of bounce the lineup out a little bit more. But, we're getting closer to we're done talking about the future, and now the future is here. So I'm encouraged by that. And I'm hoping that this year, in the next week or so, we start to put together some pieces that will help us this year, but also kind of put us in a position to, compete, which everyone throws around. But I think next year is probably the time that they really, really want to do it.
Yeah. I mean, balance, like the trade deadline is balance. Like it's justifying, are we going to go for that star player? Are we going to go for mid-tier? And if we go for the star, are we willing to give up these prospects? Or should we go with the lesser deal and take, the lesser player, but give up lesser prospects? And it's this fine balance that I think that we were a little frustrated with Heimblum during his time here, that he didn't seem to kind of pick a lane. I know in 2022, we, looking back in hindsight, we kind of all wish he sold. Get rid of Eovaldi, get rid of Bogarts,
JD.
Get rid of JD, get them all out. You could have probably got some even more prospects in return. You could say maybe he was hoping to re-sign them, and maybe ownership said no, we're not moving up the budget. That could be the case. I know last trade deadline, we heard from, I think it was Chris Cotello, that at the deadline, Bloom wasn't allowed to add to the payroll. So the only option to him for to add would be to send out money or get the other team to eat the majority of the deals. And so we're seeing Breslow, obviously, he says we're picking a lane. Sam Kennedy's comments today don't make me feel incredibly confident. Mm-hmm. Every time that dude speaks, he has to say something, and it's just one sentence within his entire, what he's saying that just makes everything else. Yeah,
I feel like
his whole point. Yeah,
he'll say like what you want to hear, and then he'll leave one sentence within it that makes the entire rest of what he said like you doubt it. You don't believe it.
It's like, I don't think it's the right term. It's like kind of like plausible deniability. Like, okay, I'm saying this, but if it goes wrong, remember that I also said this. So my full-time job is in sports PR. Sam Kennedy is S tier.
Oh yeah, he does it great.
He's amazing. Like he
knows what he's doing.
It frustrates me to listen to because I know I'm no genius, but I feel like when he talks, I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing. He's leaving it open-ended so that if something happens, you can't, dunk on him and be like,
we kind of saw that. I mean, switching sports a little bit. Now, Belichick just hated everybody, but like we saw it with him just not saying much. In the media, it's the less you say is usually the better.
Yeah.
In Boston,
especially, yeah. If you go on, and that's why I think like Tristan Casas is such a refreshing yet somewhat polarizing of a personality in Boston.
He's so smart, man. He's so good at marketing himself. Like I wish
just sits there and talks, and people are like, "Holy shit, this never." We don't get that here.
You know what's weird is people call Casas like a strange dude. I feel like he's so much more relatable than 95% of.
He's just so much.
He totally is. He's 100% himself. He's doing his whole yoga routine, pregame, and he's doing like the painted fingernails thing, but for some reason people just have an issue with whatever. But like he's 100% himself. Yeah. Which you're gonna rub some people the wrong way, but as long as you're 100% yourself 100% of the time, there's really nothing you can say. And it is, to your point, after spending 20 years with Belichick, it's refreshing.
I'll tell you guys when Casas does media, like when we're doing stuff for WEEI and we're gonna ask him a question. He doesn't want any preview. He wants to be caught off guard by the question. Like if you start telling him the question, he'll go, no, stop. I want to authentically react to it. I swear to God, he does that. He does not want to know what the question is beforehand. Like he is genuinely an authentic guy. And forget which one of you said it. It's refreshing. Like he seems like a guy that you would just go to the bar with and have a beer. Like he's a normal dude. So
totally. We just don't get any of that in Boston. And like you said, because it's the media in Boston is really tough, especially for ownership and head coaches and managers and all that, where they're obviously they're trained basically by their PR and stuff like that to kind of say the least amount possible. Now, some players and coaches will say, they're more willing to be a little bit more open, and then some are very tight-lipped. Obviously, we saw it with the Patriots for years, even the players like, are you unhappy with your contract? No, I'm just here to play.
Yeah.
When now, Belichick's gone and it's, hey, you upset with your contract? Yeah, I'm upset with my contract. Like we're seeing with Judon right now. He's been up front. He wants more money. He wants a new deal, but he's going to sit here and play because he knows how the business works. And so with Casas, it's a personality that's just different, and so people are reacting to it and getting, especially early on, we saw a little bit of a kind of rebellion against the personality.
Well, that was when he was brand new. I do have to say, and I got to be careful how I speak about this, but Red Sox PR, Justin and those guys, I think they do an awesome job. They've really they're perfect at walking the line between too much exposure and then letting the guys be themselves, which I feel like this is my first year with access to the team, like getting credential and everything. I don't know how things used to be, but from my point of view as someone who works in PR, the way they handle it, I think is great. I think it's much more modern, and they let the guys do media. They let them, we ask the dumbest questions. When Gordo and I go to Fenway and we're asking them like, who would win in a fight, a grizzly bear or a gorilla? I feel like you didn't see that 3-4 years ago. And yeah, it's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but
yeah, like if you were trapped on an island thing that you guys did in the in spring training.
Yeah, and look how that affected Jaren Durant. He got so freaked out that Costas would eat him that he became like the friggin' best player in the world. So
that's the fuel. That's actually the only reason why Durant has popped off this year. It's because he was afraid that Costas was going to eat him.
Like, oh man, that guy's huge. I don't want that dude to eat
me.
But
I think you're right though. Like the Sox do it pretty well in how they allow the players media access. You know, they seem like they get interviews left and right, and they give you enough without kind of
they don't lift the veil. Like I don't have clubhouse access. Like I can't get in the clubhouse, but I'm like on the field, and for Gordo and I to have that access just to talk to these guys, and we tell them like, yo, we're not traditional media. We're not going to get you with any like gotcha questions. We're going to ask you dumb stuff. It's going to be funny off the cuff, and if there's anything that you don't like afterwards, tell us, and we won't post it. So I think it's great that I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm just saying I think it's great that the Red Sox allow the players to do fun stuff like that. And I feel like the Patriots are the one team that in Boston that hasn't quite gotten there. Maybe the Bruins too, but
yeah, well, that's the big change that we've seen obviously since Mayo is here now, where we're seeing, you know, we have a head coach in Mayo that actually talks to you.
Yeah,
we got players who have been more vocal. They said today that there's now a hangout room that has video games and a pool table. Like that never happened under Belichick. There's like a basketball hoop in the locker room. Like that certainly never happened.
Yeah, they're evolving. It's good because like when Belichick was here, I thought like the absence of all that stuff and the kind of military style football team, I thought that worked. You had Tom Brady, you had Bill Belichick, but you don't have either of those guys anymore. So it's nice to see them adapting at least. Like you're way more locked into the Pats than I am. Obviously, I watch all the Pats games, but from the outside looking in, it just seems like they're not there yet, but they're doing their best to kind of become. They're no longer the Patriots that we grew up with. I was born in the mid '90s, so I kind of I barely remember Drew Bledsoe. My entire memory is Brady. So you're no longer this outlier team that has like God himself as quarterback. You're a normal team, and you know, not as fun, but they're adapting, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, we for the last 24 or 5 years, like it was a zombie apocalypse, like in Gillette Stadium, where the coach didn't say much, the players didn't say much, so like there really wasn't a ton to report, and we got so used to that, and we almost kind of like defended Bill over time of like ha ha ha, like that's his gimmick. He just doesn't like the media. But like I think we all can say we like more access. It's better.
I liked it when it was winning and when it was seemingly working. As soon as Brady left, and then Bill was still doing the antics of the "I'm not answering your questions" and kind of doing his like grumbles on the microphone. Then we're
kind of fueled the frustration.
You're losing, and you're kind of a dick. Like I don't like you at all anymore. And then that kind of started the snowball of the team sucks. You can't build it on offense at least. So that kind of led to a lot of people being like, "Wait, this." Maybe wasn't the formula for a long time. So, but I agree. I think letting people in, letting us, have some access without giving us, the full formula, is good. It's just refreshing. It's good for everyone. It's good for people and the players. It's good for players. Good for kids that come up. It's good for
the players feel better. That was Belichick's biggest thing, especially in recent years. The older he got. We've seen how generations have changed over the last 10, 15 years where, 20 years ago when you were a rookie, it was a lot more put your head down and work.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's, we kind of saw it with Mac Jones. It was why. It's asking questions. It's, being a little bit more vocal, having to be easier on them. And it kind of clashed with Belichick's, I think, kind of approach. But I do want to get kind of back onto the Red Sox topic. I got two more topics I want to talk about. The first one is, we talked about obviously the logjam of prospects that are coming up, and the current roster is already left-handed heavy. It kind of really more your opinions and I guess a little bit predictions of how you kind of think it's all going to play out in the coming years. Obviously, we got a bunch of outfielders. We have a bunch of middle infielders. We don't have a lot of pitchers. How do you see like the 2026 team roster on opening day kind of looking in terms of all these players coming up?
It's a tough question. 2026. Well, I think Teal's going to be the starting catcher. I think Connor Wong's probably going to be gone, and that's a compliment to Wong. I think he's too good to be a backup at this point. They're going to move him. I don't want a Bobby Dahlbeck situation where you have Dahlbeck playing well, Tristan Casas looming, but they're like, I like this Dahlbeck kid too. Let's stick with him.
He could hit 30 home runs.
Yeah, he could, and so could I. So I think they're going to move off of Wong eventually. He's too good to be sitting on the bench, so I think he's going to get dealt. It's going to be Teal, Casas. Second base, I got no clue. I like Grissom, maybe.
I mean, maybe Story. Like, I think, like, we can't really trust that Story will be available.
Yeah.
But, like, he's on a contract for what, 3 more years?
Yeah, after this one, yeah. Okay, so second base is weird. Yeah, Story, Grissom, Hamilton. I don't think Valdez is going to cut it. York, yeah, York. Yeah, I think York's going to get moved, I believe. I'm not sure. Yeah. Second base might be the toughest to predict. Shortstop and third, easy, Meyer, Devers. And then outfield is where it gets a little cloudy again. Shot. Actually, maybe not. Maybe it's not that cloudy because I think Roman Anthony's going to have a corner. Sedon's already locked in. Just one more corner outfielder. I guess that's the question mark. I don't think it's going to be Abreu because then you got like 7 lefties in the lineup. That's a little crazy.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the big issue is like on top of having a surplus, they're all lefties, and they're going to have to balance it where like if you put between second basemen, York's a righty, Grissom's a righty, I guess. Story's a righty. Meadroth is a righty, right? Yeah. Meadroth is a righty. So I guess that position they'll probably be good, but we talked about like the other infielders and catcher. They're all lefties. They're all basically locked into the lineup for the next few years. If you say Roman Anthony's here, he's going to be basically locked in. Duran seemingly will be here. That's already, 6 lefties?
Yeah. I didn't even mention Duran. So that would be another corner. How do I? Jeez.
Yeah. So that's left with Rafaela in center, second base, who would presumably be a righty, and DH. Now we could see, and I know you've kind of been a little bit for it, is the idea of just moving Devers to DH long term.
People like, his defense has gotten a little bit better, but he's not taking any runs off the board. Like, it's good that he's not making errors, but he's just like, it's got to be hit.
This is all I wanted all I asked from him, what he's doing this year, where he's been just serviceable. But I think, like, and I know you've alluded to this as well, is that like they're probably going to be able to have a situation in the next year or two where it's not about Devers not being able to play the position, because again, I think he's been serviceable. But you just have a better defensive option, and you can move Devers to DH just because you have a better option at third. So if they get a righty bat at third base, maybe it's Meadroth, or maybe it's Story at third and someone else at second base. I just think it's people are looking at that as like he's a $30 million a year DH. That's not good.
Yeah, well, I get that. You want to be getting value.
He's paid for his glove.
Right.
He's paid for his bat. So I don't really, again, like preferably it looks a little better if he's at third and he's serviceable. Great. But like, we didn't pay Rafael Devers $300 million to play defense. We paid him to bat 280, hit 35 dingers and 120 RBIs. So whether that's coming as a third baseman or coming as a DH, I don't think it really should matter. It's just about putting the best lineup on the field.
Yeah. It's funny to me, like Red Sox fans, do you guys remember who was like the face of the team for our entire childhood and that entire 3 World Series run? He was a DH named David Ortiz. No, but I get it.
Okay with it because the dude can hit.
Yeah, I don't want to be facetious about it. I get it. If you sign a guy for $331 million, you want to get value on both sides of the ball. But the fact of the matter is, you have to consider the context of the situation. They had just let Mookie and Xander walk. Bad look. they had to give Devers all the money in the world.
Oh,
they had
yeah.
I
mean, we were like, I remember like in the chats, it's like we were on the brink of like blowing up if they let him walk.
I would have lost my mind.
Yeah, Red Sox Nation would have like literally been trying to burn down Fenway if they let Devers walk out the door.
100%.
I mean,
John Henry's house.
I give him, because I think the deal that they got him on was very reasonable, and I gave credit to, a little bit to Bloom, but granted it was a kind of obvious decision, and it really just came down to ownership saying, yes, I'll give him that much money.
Yeah, I don't know who you give credit to for that. Like you said, with Bloom, no brainer. With ownership, it was just kind of like I'll do exactly what I should be doing. Like,
yeah, well, like, the biggest thing is for free agents, big time free agents. It's like Ohtani signed for, what was it, $700 million? Like, was it Friedman out there in LA as a GM?
Oh, Friedman, Andrew Friedman.
Friedman's, talking to him, trying to get him to come in the door, but like, it's not Friedman's decision to say, okay, we'll give you $700 million.
Yeah, if you have like full access to the money, and you know that you have full access, like, it's so tough as a fan to grade these signings because we don't know who's doing what. And I feel like I'm fooling myself if I say like, well, Chaim Bloom shouldn't get the credit for this or that, or like with Devers, because we're Red Sox fans, we know the context of the entire situation. So it's easier to say like, okay, yeah, obviously they had to do this. But like with Freeman, Freddie Freeman, Andrew Friedman signing Freddie Freeman, that's freaking tough. We don't know what was happening behind the scenes. We don't know if Friedman had to talk ownership into getting that money available, or if there was a negotiating situation with Freddie Freeman and like the Braves were offering him this and the Dodgers came back with that, and the Yankees also jumped in. And so, yeah, it's just hard because I want to give analysis on these things, but at the same time, I don't want to be disingenuous and be like, oh, I know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't.
Yeah,
it's all just
we certainly don't. The way I've kind of, I don't know, set the line in my head is like, if you're going longer than like 6 years, or you're going like above 30 a year, like those thresholds, you got to start talking more towards ownership. Craig Breslow wasn't calling ownership for approval to sign Giolito. Like that's not really happening. But when you sign guys like Devers, Ohtani, Bryce Harper, like these deals aren't happening unless ownership gives that approval. Now the GM like Friedman or Bloom or Breslow, whoever it may be, Dombrowski could say, I don't want to sign this guy, and that's his decision. But like when he decides this is the guy I want to sign, you're not writing a $300, $400, or $700 million contract without ownership saying, yes, we can do this.
I mean, ownership's going to be involved in every deal. Even with like Giolito, I think ownership had to have been involved. There's still millions of dollars going back and forth.
It's more of a...
To your point, the degree of it varies. The degree of how much they're involved, like way more with Rafael Devers than with like the Hunter Renfroe sign. I don't know why that was the first one that came to mind, but like, or no, with that, yeah, that was a free agent. God, it was a while ago. I don't even remember, but you get the point. Like more involvement from ownership in the bigger deals for sure. I agree with you on that, but it's the attributing the credit part is where it's tough. It's much easier with trades because trades, it's one guy on one team on one side, one team on the other. They got their GMs, and they got all the assistants, and like who's going to come out on top. And for me, like it's just so hard to grade these things the day of. It takes so long for us to know how a trade will age. Even like I'll go back to Hunter Renfroe. We all thought, oh my God, shit trade. You got rid of Renfroe, solid bat, not a great defender, but he's got a nuke in right field. You can use that. And then he goes to Milwaukee, doesn't do much. He's been on 72 different teams since then, and David Hamilton looks like a really good player. So I would say Red Sox.
Benintendi deal looked terrible at first. Now the dude's like has the worst WAR in baseball,
largest contract and worst WAR.
Yeah, the guy's getting paid $15 million a year, and he's not just average. He is flat out bad.
No, he's bad. Was that Winkowski? Winkowski deal?
Yeah, we got Winkowski
deal
and a couple lower end guys. Was it
Franchi? Franchi, no, Siebold was the Phillies. That was the
Yeah.
Siebold. Forgot about Connor Siebold.
Yeah, you're Frankie Cordero. Yeah, obviously he flared out, but like Winkowski looks to be like at least a decent reliever in the majors, and I'll take that 100 times over what paying Benintendi and what he's giving the White Sox right now. So like you said, yeah, trades are a lot easier to kind of judge. In contracts, I'm just like, I try to balance like the threshold of like how much ownership really kind of made that decision.
Yeah. Like imagine if you're a Dodgers fan, what year was it? 2016. You get this guy Josh Fields, this electric reliever, and you're like, oh, nice. This is going to really help our bullpen down the stretch. We're going to make a run for the World Series. This is going to be great. And all we gave up was this guy who all he does is he's got a hit tool and some power, but he can't run. He can't play defense. This Yordan Alvarez guy, probably not going to be much. Whoops. He is something. So it's so hard to judge these things. That's why like when I make these mock trades, I do a million of these, and that's how I started working with like Brad Foe and the Play Tessie guys, is because like we had a good time making those mock trades. It's fun. Everyone likes to hypothesize, but I always laugh when I post one and somebody has a really strong reaction. Like if they're like, I'm not sure about this. This might be risky. I'm like, okay, cool. But if someone goes, this is so stupid, why would you make this? I'm like, how do you know? How do you know?
You get, first of all, I think we're, especially you and I, Sammy, is Twitter is just a ball of chaos. And everybody has an opinion, especially if it's a burner account. So when we I post some of the mocks as well. It's like I posted the trade for Jameson Talon and Smiley the other day, and I got about 70% absolutely not. That's the dumbest trade ever. He sucks. Why would you ever propose that? You're an idiot. And then I got 30%. Oh, absolutely. That's a great deal. Great ad. And it's like,
how do you know? I'm guilty of it too. I do it too sometimes, but yeah, man, it's always like, it's funny. In the off season, I remember they were looking for a second baseman, and I had all these different ideas. Like you could go this way, you could sign this guy, you could make this.
Yeah, we
trade.
were on the Whit Merrifield train.
Oh God, no, not him. But the point was, like, and I remember I had like a tweet or something, me being like joking around, being like, oh, Red Sox fans are really on the lookout for that great hitting second baseman with A-tier defense and great speed that also costs absolutely nothing and is team controlled. Like, you can't just have this perfect player. You got to give to get. So I always just kind of like, I used to get really get agitated when people would say like, oh, this is a stupid trade idea. But now I'm kind of like, all right, man, I know I fucked some of these up, and some of them are bad, of course. Some of them are great. Some are in between. I make a million of them. Like they're not all going to be.
I couldn't tell you in sports, whatever I'm talking about. I'll just like be sitting on the couch at night, and I'll get I'll go look at my notifications, and it's like, you're a goddamn moron, and I literally I audibly like laugh.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this is so ridiculous that people are just like commenting these things. And then sometimes I'll go back at them, and like it just becomes like an argument. I'm just sitting there hysterically laughing at this entire situation.
I think one thing I've learned from kind of doing podcasts and having more access is to be more humble and accept that I don't know everything, and I'm going to be wrong a lot of the time, and that's totally fine. Like just own up to it, and it's not personal when people don't like my takes. It's okay. We don't have to agree.
Yeah, I mean, if people tell me I'm an idiot, I'll be like, why am I an idiot? And no, go ahead and tell me I'm an idiot. I might disagree with you.
See, I don't even respond anymore. I just go like, I agree. Or I'm like, I might be. I kind of am an idiot.
People that like get told they're an idiot and like go on this rant page, like lashing out, calling the other person names, like all this, all that. Yeah. And then you're just sitting back and you're like,
man, we're talking about baseball on the internet.
Yeah, dude. Like we're talking about baseball, man.
Like,
it's not that big of a deal. But all right, I think that's kind of our Red Sox segment. Sammy, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you want to kind of plug while you're here?
Yeah. If you enjoyed this show, I would say our show Play Tessie. We talk a lot about the Red Sox. Play Tessie. That's on Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. Download us, whatever podcast app you like, at Play Tessie. You can also follow me on Twitter, HeapHammer94. And tune in. Let's talk socks.
Yeah, and be nice or not be nice and call you.
You can be mean. I just might not answer you if you're mean. Nice boy.
He's because he's crying in the corner.
I cry. Yeah, don't make me cry. If you make me cry, then I'll cry.
Fair enough. All right, Sammy, I appreciate you coming on. We'll have to do this again soon.
You got it, man. Take care.
Take care, guys. All right, that's Sammy James with Play Tessie. It was good to talk some socks. We're going to finish up here with some New England Patriots. Training camp is back underway. We've seen 2 full days, I think, of practices so far. Zach, what's your thoughts so far? I mean, I know there's not a ton of, you can judge things on, but how you feeling 2 days into camp?
I mean, I feel good. I always feel like a kid in a candy store whenever football comes back. So even if they suck, right, I'm happy that they're back. But a couple of good things that I've taken so far is just, happy that they're not trying to push Drake May to start right away and, kind of make the same mistake that they did with Mac Jones. Bringing in Jacoby Brissett to be the starting quarterback, at least with what they're saying. We talked earlier about how we're getting a bit more insight from Gerard Mayo than we did from Bill Belichick, and Gerard this far has been pretty adamant that Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter. So happy with that. Also, a couple of reports about Jalen Polk being this stud and kind of taking over the receiving core and really standing out. So happy to see that, maybe we finally hit on a receiver, on a drafted rookie receiver. Unfortunate that the first one we might have hit on is after Bill leaves, but so all things considered, so far so good. And we get a couple of guys back who were hurt last year, Gonzalez and Judon, assuming that Judon stays, but all good so far. All positive thoughts here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think really anything spectacular or anything crazy notable has happened. And I guess that's, especially the first 2 days with no pads, is I guess more of a good thing than a bad thing. May has reportedly looked solid. Like I said, they're not in pads, they're not going 150%. So it's difficult to kind of judge. But overall, kind of like you said, this is the most exciting kind of feeling about the Patriots that we've had since 2019, the last Brady year, where you felt in the last Brady year and stuff, it was more like we're going to be good. And this isn't necessarily that, but in terms of just excitement about the future and excitement in wanting to see this year, between Belichick being gone and just the new regime where everybody's excited to kind of see what it's going to be, how Mayo is going to be, how AVP, how Covington is going to be. And then, obviously you got Drake May, you got Polk, you got Baker, you get all these new offensive pieces with Caden Wallace and Cora for a tackle and all that. And you kind of just get a little bit excited. Polk so far has exceeded, and it's tough again, because it's tough to judge too much, but I like him more than I did pre-draft. I was actually not super high on him. I want to say he was my wide receiver 14, 15. I felt like he was solid, but I don't know how great he was going to be.
Yeah. And
maybe it's a little bit of biased feelings, but I like more what I see. The more I see him, I like him.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be, you can go into how you feel about him on the field, but I feel comfortable in saying that I think he's going to be at least solid. You kind of on the same train?
I agree. I think, to your point, it's hard to judge, especially in college. This is kind of what Bill's always talked about, is why it's so hard to hit on a receiver, at least in him. It's hard to judge, especially when he's the number 2 option, right? Obviously, Roma Dunze was the number 1 there. So as the number 2, it's always a bit tougher to judge. But I like what I see so far. I think he could take over as that number 1 option for us. He's a bit bigger, I feel than most maybe other receivers we have outside of a couple of names. But for the most part, I feel we're pretty small at that position, so he could be the outside guy and kind of take over as the X. But yeah, all things considered, so far so good. And maybe I'm a little biased too, right? Being, I have family.
Yeah, no, the biggest comparison I kind of saw, and I really kind of agree with it the more I watch him, is he's a little bit of a bigger and athletic Jacoby Myers.
I can see
that. We all saw Jacoby Myers here and his development, and he turned into just like the dude's just always open. He's reliable. You know what you're going to get from him.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that you didn't get from Jacoby Myers was the deep threat, speed, the jump ball guy, like going up and get it, the size. You didn't really have that. Not that he wasn't really a small dude. He had a little bit of a height to him, but he didn't play necessarily that big.
Yeah, he didn't play up to his height for sure.
Yeah, he played more of a slot guy. So I look at Polk, and I think you'll get pretty similar concept to him, but with a little more of that vertical threat. And if he can be that could be Jacoby Myers is a good wide receiver.
Yeah.
And so if Polk can take that and bring it to the next level to some degree, he could. That's at least a wide receiver too. And so I think if he comes in and he's a little bit better than Jacoby Myers is right now, it's not going to be a home run pick, but we would say solid pick. You got a wide receiver too. Yeah, for the next 4 years, that's a solid pick. You at least you didn't bust like we have in the last 15 years,
20 years.
How things have been. But what are your thoughts on again, we haven't seen much, and he was hurt, I guess, for mandatory minicamp. But what are your thoughts on Javon Baker and kind of what you feel about him?
Like the attitude. Love that he, thinks of himself as that true number one, right? I think that viral clip of get your popcorn ready or whatever it was, something of that. I haven't seen him, truthfully. I haven't seen a whole bunch of them. You kind of alluded to it. I think his hand was broken or there was something like that. I think that I read a report about
some of his finger.
Finger or something like that. From what I've seen, I like, especially in college. But again, tougher to see because, was it UCF he went to school? So harder to kind of get a gauge of, is that actually the right talent that he's going to be facing in the NFL? But again, the attitude's there. He thinks of himself as a true number one, which is always, a plus to start with. So again, I'm excited about what we have. I just need to see more of it because at the moment I haven't seen too much.
Yeah. One thing this Patriots wide receiver core, other than the fact that it hasn't had much talent, which is the biggest issue, it also hasn't really had a guy that was a dog, that big personality. And now sometimes big personalities aren't good. If they take it overboard, they're a locker room issue, all that. I know Baker has a little bit of a checkered past on that stuff. But if he can kind of put his head down and work, which seems like he's doing so far, he's got that dog mentality to be like the alpha receiver, the wide receiver one. Mm-hmm. And I think he has enough speed in the size and the playing style where he could be a number one. I just think he's a little bit more risk. I could see him just being decent. But I do think, and I loved the pick in round 4. I wanted to take him in the 70s. So to get him at what it was 110 or 105 or something like that, or 108, something like that. I was thrilled. So I'm happy that he's here. But I feel less confident about him. Mm-hmm. But I could maybe say he has a higher ceiling than Polk.
I could see that. I think to your point about without risk, there's no reward. I think it's true, right? I mean, that was one of the things we always gave Bill a hard time for was he would take no risk. He picked N'Keal Harry over guys like AJ Brown and Debo because of, the interview as if that is what's going to make you a better player, right? He just didn't want to deal with anyone who was going to give him a hard time. He had Matt Patricia running the freaking offense when he's a defensive, I would consider him a defensive failure, but he won a Super Bowl, whatever. He just did not want to deal with anybody who was an attitude or had a chip on their shoulder for whatever
personality.
reason. Yeah, personality.
Someone that will fight the power.
Yeah, exactly. He just wanted people to fall in line and listen to him as the end all be all. So to get a guy like Javon Baker who has the opposite of that, I'm excited for it. Now it's got to work, right? Keyshawn Boutte hasn't worked out, and he kind of was in a similar boat. But yeah, you got to take the risk to get the reward, and I think he has the tools and he has the attitude. Now he has to kind of channel that, but he has what it takes, I think, to be a number one or at least an impact player.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of on the same boat there. Where do your thoughts? Again, we haven't seen a ton, but what are your thoughts on like the state of the offensive line or where things at?
I had that on my list. I'm nervous about it, right? I mean, David Andrews is getting older. Like that he's still the center, but he's older. Outside of that, there's a lot of question marks. I mean, I'm at Owenu's back, but he's a guard. He's not a tackle. He tried that experiment for a bit, but we'll see if Okorafor or this guy Caden Wallace can actually play at the position. I think last time I checked, they had Okorafor at left and Wallace at right. We'll see if that sticks, but that's going to be the biggest question mark, because that was ultimately what can make or break a good team. If you have a good line, typically you're going to be a good team. So that's a huge question mark for me right now.
Yeah, and on top of good team, like protecting a rookie quarterback potentially.
Exactly.
We kind of saw that with Mac a little bit, where he was kind of running for his life sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in Andrews. You're going to get relatively steady play from him. I like Sal. Seems like he's going to be left guard with Strange out for the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty confident in him. I think he was solid overall as a rookie. So if he can conceivably take that next step, he should be solid, in a second year. Onwenu could be tackle, could be guard. It seems like he's starting at guard.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that changes. But like you said, there's big question marks at the tackle. I'm optimistic about Okorafor. But like, there's a reason why he wasn't some like highly touted tackle, in free agency. I think he's got some raw talent. I think he's got good size. He moves pretty well. He played right tackle at Pitt mostly, but he has experience at left. So it's more kind of getting him in the lab with Scott Peters and having a mind blank who the other O-line guy that they got was, and seeing if they could kind of put everything together for him and turn him into a solid guy. Right tackle, you got Caden Wallace, obviously, the guy they took in the third round.
Yep.
You got Lowe, who supposedly took first team snaps today, and you got Calvin Anderson in the mix, who, he's happy to be alive right now after getting malaria last year.
True.
But he seems to be back into football shape and ready to go. And I think I kind of liked that signing last year, in feeling that I think he could have been like a serviceable right tackle. So, I'm going to be optimistic again and say I think that maybe he could. But like you said, right now it's by far the biggest weakness for them. If the offensive line doesn't play out, and we'll see a lot of it in preseason, so we'll be able to get a little bit of a judgment. If their offensive line is shit, like that makes you not want to start May, because you don't want to put them in a fire.
Exactly.
And that's kind of where we can like segment off into and kind of finish up with that topic, because it'll take a little bit. But where are you on May in his development? How do you see, if you had to predict, how do you think it's going to happen? What do you want to happen? And kind of like, what do you think the roadblocks that could affect it all?
You're asking like when he's going to start, or just when like development?
Yeah, when do you think he's going to start? When do you want him to, like, when you kind of think he'll be ready, type of thing? Or what would your path be at this moment?
Ideally, I would sit him for as much of the season as possible, right? I think that there's a track record more so of players or quarterbacks who sit their first year tend to be a little better than guys who are thrown in. Now, there's obviously guys who kind of throw a wrench in that with Cam Newtons and Joe Burrows, but I would rather him sit, learn behind Jacoby Brissett, and kind of see game speed, see NFL speed first, rather than being thrown into it. Now, there's concerns about if the team starts to go downhill really quickly, and they're 0-4, they're 1-3, and the offense is just as anemic as it was last year. Like, is Kraft going to hear the noise and hear the boos at Gillette and be like, "Hey, Gerard, put him in," So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we can at least, survive the first month and we kind of look pretty decent. But ideally, we'd sit him, and maybe by week 12, week 13, if it's kind of getting there, then he has to come in. Fine, but ideally, I'd sit him.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I hear all this talk, and I'll try to keep this as simple as I can be, but I hear all this talk that, he has to outplay Brissett, and I just really don't agree with that. I don't think it really has much of anything to do with Brissett. They know what they're getting from Brissett. Even if Brissett comes out and has a good preseason, like, they know what they're going to get from him in the regular season. So it's not like a true battle where it's two unknowns. It's one known guy, one known commodity, and one unknown. So, like, for me, and why I don't really buy into it, I think it's just about Drake May. It's just about him. It's, the footwork's overblown, but, like, where's his footwork? Where's his comfortability with the playbook? How is his pre-snap reads? How is his post-snap reads? How is he feeling inside the pocket in terms of feeling pressure, knowing when to get out, all that? If they feel comfortable with him, go with them.
Yeah. If
you feel comfortable with him, and I'll say the O-line doesn't look like they're going to get him killed.
Yeah.
If things align and you feel okay, like, he's ready, just go. And if that's week one, that's week one.
Mm-hmm.
If they feel ready, like, they don't need to tiptoe the game in terms of, like, if he sat the whole season, like, do I necessarily think that's the wrong move? No, I'm going to trust what they see. If they feel like he's not ready, don't play him. But if he's ready himself, put him out there. Like, go. Like, he'll work through it, and as long as you feel comfortable with him and how he's mentally processing the game, there's no reason to really kind of keep him off the field. Again, like, if you feel he needs work, sit him. Like, if you feel like he needs a couple weeks, I do think if he doesn't play week one, you're not going to see him till bare minimum week 4 or 5. I don't see a scenario where, like, he plays week 2 or even kind of week 3. So, like, it's just if he's ready, go. Like, it's just kind of that simple. Don't play games, and I know it's kind of a polarizing topic on Twitter of what people kind of feel like they should do with him, but it's all on him. And I think my prediction, I think he's going to play week 1. That's just what my gut tells me. My gut says he's going to show Mayo enough where they're just like, let's go. Like, let's ride it out.
Yeah.
I'm not at the point where I think that's the right decision just yet,
mm-hmm.
but I could get there depending on how things go.
Well, that is what happened with Mac, right? I mean, there was like reports of him teaching Cam the playbook at times. And he came out week 1. He had a decent rookie season, and he was ready to go. He showed that he was ready to go. Now his downfall was Bill was dicking around with the coordinators and kind of pulling his friends in, as I mentioned before. So, yeah, to your point, if he's ready to go, then I also have no issue with him. I just would be wary of the line to make sure that he's not, you're not just like Swiss cheese out there and getting him killed every snap. But if he's ready to go, he's ready to go. Nothing's more time isn't going to make him more ready to go. I'm just more concerned of, like, and maybe I do just have, post-Mac traumatic stress disorder of you sent them out there and I got my hopes up and now I'm
PMSD, post-Mac stress disorder.
Exactly, post-Mac stress disorder. So that might be why I'm more skeptical or hesitant, maybe is the better word, to start him week 1. But you're right. If he's ready to go, he's ready to go. There's no reason to put percent.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of saw Mac. Like, Mac as a rookie was solid. Like, he had one of the better overall statistically rookie seasons that in not so much, I guess, history, but he had a good rookie season statistically. They won 10 games, and like you said, that things went off the rails with Patricia and all that, and ultimately it turned into a disaster. But it's just May mentally. If they, and that's why Mac won the job.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Belichick felt like Mac was further, like he was comfortable back there. He was further along, and he would give them a better chance to win.
Yeah.
If they feel like Drake May will give them a better chance to win, and a lot of that is mental for a quarterback, go run him out there. A lot of it's obviously a fine line between like not wanting to put him in the line of fire with a battle line, or if he's not ready, like you don't want to ruin a quarterback, which I think they kind of did with Mac and we can go on with that for years. But if you feel like he's ready, put him out there, and like he's gonna make some mistakes, and he might go out there in the first drive. He's out there, he throws a horrible pick. Like, get him back out there and go. Like, trust your gut and what you see was him. And if you're ready, if you feel he's ready, there shouldn't be anything that stops them to get the ball rolling. And my gut is just for some reason telling me week one, because maybe it's just because I believe. I don't know how long you followed me, but I was a May believer for a long time before the draft.
I mean, he's got a lot of people behind him too who are in the same boat, right? CJ Stroud said he was the number one, most.
I was surprised that he said that.
I was surprised to hear that too. As you're going through that, and as you were saying, like, all your reasons for starting Drake May week one, is it weird or wrong to say that Drake is almost more, and I may have to workshop this take here, but like Mac Jones came out and he had like just 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers. He had the entire Bama offensive line, who I think all of them went to the NFL. Like he came out.
I think I know where you're going with this, but
yeah. So he was like, okay, I got it going on, and he knew, he felt like no one could touch him, right? So Drake didn't have that, right? So he had to he's already had to work with the kinks and understand that not everyone's Bama. You're not going to be behind, Pro Bowls and have Najee Harris to hand the ball off to, or Devontae Smith to throw down deep to. So like the ego is not going to be there. The expectation might not be there that Mac had. So like, is he more pro ready? I don't know, but he's definitely might have more.
He might handle the chaos better.
Yeah. Thank you. Like he might just.
Yeah, I agree. And I've said this before, talking with friends and stuff, that he came from chaos. Mm-hmm. Like he came from a poor offensive line. He came from poor receivers. He came from a situation where he was the far, far superior talent on that team.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, like that's going to help you handle the chaos if you already have. And you talked about, comparing him to Mac. Like you said, Mac was like on Alabama. He had multiple elite wide receivers there. He had a good O-line. He was able to just drop back and pick apart defenses, which he did very well. He had one of the best college seasons in history. Mm-hmm. But he didn't have to deal with a ton of chaos. And so when he came to New England and the receivers weren't very good and the O-line wasn't very good, he had never kind of experienced that type of chaos. So yeah, I mean, like Drake May dealing with the chaos, it makes it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
With throwing him in, because he has dealt with that before.
Yeah, I can't see Drake May throwing his hands up and swearing at Matt Patricia because the play sucks or whatever. Like I think to that point he's dealt with the chaos and he can handle it better. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens. And I think we're 2 weeks out now from the first preseason game. Which 2
weeks from today. Oh, I can't wait.
I know.
It's I've for years and years you watch preseason and you're like, I'm not paying attention to this much. Like it's just on in the background. Occasionally look up. Now it's like I'm going to be freaking glued to the TV watching this dude play, because I think early on, in probably game one, he should see. I mean, they might have 4 quarterbacks. Jesus Christ!
Who's the fourth?
Zappy and Milton.
Yeah, Milton.
I mean, they could easily cut Zappy by then, but if you have 4, he needs to see at least like a little over a quarter in game 1. Ideally, you want him playing like I want him playing like a half in the first preseason game, and then like maybe you could give him a little over a half in game 2. And Brissett doesn't need 3 games. Like if you feel like you want to really see what you got at him in game 3, give him give him the full game.
Yeah. No, I think
3
I
games.
agree. Would you? You can't. Would you start? You can't start Drake in game 1 preseason. Yeah, that was good.
I don't. I mean, you could. I don't think they will. I think it's kind of going to be a situation where even if they feel by week 1, which is obviously 2 weeks away, even if they feel internally that May is overtaking him and will win that job, I think week 1 you're going to still see Brissett start. Because again, like it's not that it really matters in the end, but give the veteran the start, let May settle down in the first half, and then go out there in the second half or whatever, whenever he comes in. And so I mean, you could, and again, it depends. Like, there's a chance that I wouldn't be entirely shocked if Brissett doesn't play, there's a chance he doesn't play in the first preseason game. I could see a scenario where he only plays in like the week 2, second preseason game. I assume he'll want to get some work in with all the new guys, but I could see him not playing that much because, again, like he's done it before. Like you know what you're gonna get. He's comfortable in AVP system, so it's not like he's adjusting to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I want May. There's 12 quarters between 3 games. I think he needs to be playing at least 6 of them. Like at least, if not probably closer to 8 to 10, ideally, because you want to see what you got at him. In preseason, like, you're often playing like practice squad players.
Yeah.
But like these guys are better than college football. Like these are all pro football players. And so you'll get
a chance to see like game speed, right? Game speed at UNC is not the same as in the NFL. So
yeah, I mean, even like the practice squad players that are fighting for spots on an NFL team is better than what he was seeing in most college games.
True.
Yeah, so give him minimum 8 quarters, and I'm just excited to see what he can do because I mean. Not so much my reputation, but I was very high on him. So if he sucks, I know I'll hear it from people.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if he turns into a stud, I'm not going to be quiet either. So it's fair. It's fair game. But all right, that's going to wrap this up for tonight. Zach, it was a great first show together. Next week we got Mr. Ed Hand, I believe, joining us. I think we're going next Wednesday. Ed will come in and we'll see when the deadline is. It might be next Thursday, so we'll have one more day right before that. We might have a trade or two for the Sox, by then, and then we'll have something to talk about. But until then, thanks for listening, and we'll be back, like I said, next Wednesday. I think it's 6:00 likely. But until then, thanks for listening.
For sure. Thanks, guys.